The stars glittered beyond the wide glass panels of Elisara Station, a massive orbital museum that hovered gracefully in the void. Ships of all shapes and sizes glided past, carrying diplomats, scholars, and tourists from countless worlds. Within the station's gleaming halls, ancient relics from civilizations long gone were displayed with care, illuminated by soft lights that made their intricate patterns dance in the eyes of every visitor. There were alien crystals that hummed faintly with energy, starship fragments older than recorded history, and artifacts whose creators were now only myths whispered across galaxies. Each piece carried a story, though few could read them. Dr. Elias Harper moved quietly through the exhibit, his brown eyes scanning every detail. He was human, yet not the typical human one might expect among such a diverse crowd. He was not dressed in flamboyant garb or adorned with flashy technology. Instead, he wore a simple tunic with practical pockets and carried a small data pad. His calm demeanor allowed him to observe without drawing attention. While other visitors marveled openly, Elias' fascination lay in subtleties: the tiny engravings on a star map, the worn edges of an ancient tool, the patterns of alien writing that no one else paused to notice. He had always believed that real discovery required patience and focus, not just excitement and noise. The exhibit was buzzing. Delegations from dozens of species wandered the halls, their varied forms a striking contrast. Tall beings with translucent skin that shimmered under the lights, squat creatures with multiple limbs gracefully pointing at artifacts, and insectoid scholars with delicate antennae twitching as they murmured their observations. Some spoke in musical tones, others in harsh clicks, and a few in languages humans could barely attempt. Despite this, all shared a common awe. These relics were more than art. They were a connection to a past so distant that it was almost incomprehensible. Elias lingered near a display that had recently drawn a crowd of scholars, a relic encased in a transparent shield. It was a small object, no bigger than a human hand, shaped like a disc with intricate carvings that spiraled toward its center. The carvings were not simply decorative. They seemed to follow a sequence, almost like a code, a message encoded in shapes and symbols. Scholars from other species had examined it carefully, recording its details and debating its origin. Yet none of them noticed the tiny emblem etched near the edge, almost hidden by wear and age. Elias' eyes caught it immediately. His heart skipped a beat, not from fear but from recognition. The emblem was faint, but it was unmistakable. A simple crest, a design he had seen in family records back on Earth centuries ago, passed down through generations. The lines and curves were familiar, a reminder of ancestors he had never met but whose names he knew from dusty tomes in human archives. He leaned closer, careful not to touch the protective casing. A flicker of disbelief passed through him. How could this symbol, so distinctly human, appear on a relic that clearly predated humanity's recorded exploration of the stars? He activated his data pad quietly, scanning the artifact. The holographic projection shimmered in his hand, showing the details with precision. No one around him seemed to notice his actions. Aliens continued to argue over the sequence of symbols, human tourists chatted about the beauty of the display, and security droids hummed quietly, patrolling the hall. Only Elias sensed that this was not just an ordinary discovery. Something about this relic felt like a bridge between human history and the far reaches of the galaxy. A soft voice drew his attention. "Human, you are looking at that closely," said a tall, lithe figure, its skin glimmering faintly blue under the exhibit lights. The alien's eyes, large and reflective, were focused on Elias' scanning pad. "Curious. Most of your kind only notice the shapes, not the meaning." "Purpose, yes, but by whom?" If any scholar realized that a human family crest was present on a relic older than Earth's recorded history, it could disrupt long-held assumptions about humanity's place in the galaxy. Most species considered humans young, insignificant, and inexperienced. Few expected humans to have any connection to the oldest civilizations. Elias walked through the exhibit slowly, observing other relics, but his mind kept returning to the disc. The subtle engraving seemed almost like a signature, as if some ancestor of humanity had left a mark somewhere in the galaxy, intentionally or not. The thought made his pulse quicken. Could humans have unknowingly played a part in galactic history long before the first interstellar colonies? A security droid floated past, scanning the room with quiet mechanical diligence. Elias slipped his scan into a hidden pocket, careful that no one would see. Even a simple data pad held in the wrong hands could cause speculation or worse. The last thing he wanted was a panic or a scramble over the idea that humans were connected to ancient galactic powers. He needed more information, more context. He moved to a quieter section of the exhibit where holographic records of other artifacts were displayed. Most of the information was technical, dates, materials, and coordinates. But Elias had a different approach. He cross-referenced patterns, comparing the disk to other relics from the same era. He noted similarities in design, recurring symbols, and structural arrangements. Slowly, a larger picture began to emerge. The disk was not an isolated artifact. It was part of a series, each relic carrying fragments of a story, a network of knowledge scattered across the galaxy. The realization hit him with both wonder and apprehension. If he was correct, humans were somehow linked to this ancient network, not by chance, but by bloodlines, memory, or forgotten exploration. It was a possibility that no one had ever seriously considered. The idea that humanity had left its mark among the stars long before humans could even remember it was astonishing and dangerous. Elias left the exhibit hall and walked toward a small observation deck that overlooked the endless expanse of stars. Ships drifted past, and distant planets glimmered faintly. He reflected on the enormity of the galaxy and the history hidden within it. Most species had assumed humans were insignificant, confined to their tiny corner of space. Yet here, in this station filled with the galaxy's most prized relics, Elias had found evidence that humans were far from minor players. He tapped the scan on his pad again, studying the crest. Its lines were simple, yet deliberate. It conveyed identity, heritage, perhaps even responsibility. Elias could not shake the feeling that whoever created this emblem had intended it to be found, perhaps by someone like him. A human capable of understanding, connecting, and preserving the knowledge of their ancestors. As he pondered, a soft hum resonated through the station. It was the ambient sound of the station's engines and the distant chatter of visitors, yet for a moment it felt like a signal, a subtle encouragement. Elias knew that the discovery was only the beginning. The emblem was a key, a hint of something far greater waiting to be uncovered. Across the station, he noticed a group of alien scholars observing him with quiet intensity. Their interest was polite, but Elias sensed caution beneath their polite manners. Few understood the significance of what he had found, but some were perceptive enough to recognize that a human had identified something remarkable. Whispers passed among them, subtle and precise, in languages Elias only partly understood. He smiled faintly. Humanity had always thrived on being underestimated. Perhaps this was another example of that enduring trait. Elias returned to the exhibit hall, careful to keep a casual demeanor. He wanted more than curiosity, he wanted insight. He needed to track down records, analyze patterns, and understand the full story behind the relics. The human mind, with its flexibility, intuition, and relentless curiosity, had an advantage the other species did not anticipate. While aliens relied on brute computation, telepathy, or rigid logic, humans could combine imagination with reasoning, seeing connections others missed. That evening, as the station's lights dimmed for the shift change, Elias stayed behind in the hall. Most visitors had left, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps and the hum of energy shields protecting the relics. He placed the data pad carefully on a side table, reviewing the scans. Each symbol, each line, each curve spoke of a civilization long gone, but also subtly of humans. He traced his fingers over the holographic projection, imagining the hands that had created the crest, the ancestors who had journeyed across space, and the stories lost to time. The thought of connecting the distant past to the present filled him with both awe and responsibility. Humans were young in the galaxy, yes, but perhaps not as unimportant as everyone assumed. Elias finally stood, looking out at the stars once more. The crest had been found, the relics had been observed, but the true journey was just beginning. Somewhere in the vast galaxy there were answers waiting, puzzles to solve, and a story that only humans could complete. And he, Dr. Elias Harper, intended to uncover it. The stars outside Elisara station glimmered like eyes watching, and for the first time, Elias felt that humanity was no longer merely a spectator in the galaxy. They had a place in its story, hidden, forgotten, but very real. And if he could connect the pieces, humans would no longer be underestimated. Elias Harper moved through the quieter corridors of Elisara station with purpose, his mind still racing from the discovery of the crest. The relic's faint hums echoed softly in the hall, as if encouraging him to continue. He knew he could not act recklessly. The moment any alien scholar realized that a human had found a symbol hidden for millions of years, everything could change. Some might try to claim the discovery, others might even attempt to suppress it. He made his way to the station's library, a vast archive of data crystals and holographic records, where scholars could study ancient artifacts without disturbing them. The library was quiet, illuminated by gentle lights that made the air shimmer faintly. Elias settled at a table, placing the scan of the disc before him. He traced the lines of the emblem with a fingertip, remembering the stories his grandmother used to tell him about the crest. It had belonged to a long line of explorers on Earth, people who had ventured into the unknown and documented their journeys. He began cross-referencing the relic with other artifacts in the library. The station's systems were vast, cataloging thousands of items from across the galaxy. Most of the records were in alien languages, some of them lost for centuries, but Elias had learned to read many of them through study and intuition. He noticed patterns emerging, symbols repeated in sequences, designs that mirrored one another, and unusual arrangements that suggested a deliberate connection. The relics were not scattered randomly. They were part of a larger network, a map of knowledge left by civilizations long vanished. As he worked, a subtle vibration ran through the floor. Elias looked up to see Archivist Norix, a tall reptilian figure with scales that glimmered gold and green, approaching. Norix's presence was commanding yet careful. His eyes, sharp and calculating, fixed on Elias. "You are human," Norix said, his voice smooth but edged with curiosity. "I have heard of your discovery. That disc you examined, it is part of a series. Only someone clever enough to connect the symbols could see it. Your eyes have noticed something important, something others ignored. The moment they discover your connection to the relics, some may see you as a threat." Humans had often been underestimated, laughed at, or dismissed. Time and again they had shown ingenuity that others could not match. He realized that this discovery was more than a historical curiosity. It was a chance for humans to prove themselves. "I understand," Elias said, voice steady. "What should I do?" "The relics will guide you, but there are those who watch, waiting for mistakes. You may need to travel to other sites, relics that remain hidden from public knowledge. You must prepare." Slowly, a pattern emerged. The relics formed a map, pointing toward locations in distant star systems. These were not ordinary places. They were repositories of knowledge and technology left by a precursor civilization that existed long before the galaxy's current species. As Elias pieced the information together, he realized something extraordinary. Humans were not just visitors in this galaxy. Somehow they were linked to these ancient systems. The crest on the disk was not merely decoration. It was a signature, a mark indicating that humans had in some way been connected to this civilization. A soft chime alerted him to a new message. The station's monitoring systems had detected unusual activity. Several alien delegates, some with long-standing reputations as scholars and collectors, were showing interest in Elias' research. They were not asking questions openly, but their eyes followed him, their whispers carrying over the air. Elias felt a mixture of excitement and unease. He had known that recognition of the crest could attract attention, but he had not expected it to happen so quickly. It became clear that he was now part of a larger story, one that stretched across the galaxy. The next morning, he visited the station's observation deck. Ships from different civilizations moved gracefully against the starry backdrop, carrying diplomats, traders, and adventurers. As Elias studied the scene, he realized that the galaxy was both vast and small. Connections existed everywhere, hidden and waiting for someone perceptive enough to find them. Humans, he realized, were capable of seeing what others missed. While contemplating the next step, he noticed a small shuttle descending toward the station. Its design was sleek and unfamiliar. It docked quietly, and from it emerged a delegation of alien scholars. They approached him cautiously, their expressions neutral but their eyes keen. One of them, a tall figure with silver skin and luminous eyes, spoke in a measured tone. "You are Elias Harper," the alien said. "We have been observing your work. Your findings are unusual. Perhaps you do not yet understand the significance of what you have discovered. That is why we have come." He visited restricted archives, analyzed holographic projections, and spoke with archivists from multiple species. Each piece of information confirmed his initial suspicion. The relics were interconnected, forming a web of knowledge that spanned light years. The galaxy itself had been shaped, at least in part, by civilizations humans were only beginning to comprehend, yet danger was never far. Shadows moved quietly in the periphery. Elias noticed subtle surveillance, drones that appeared near the libraries, aliens who lingered a little too long near his table, and subtle shifts in the station's security patterns. Someone, or some group, was watching. They were not obvious enemies, but their presence was undeniable. One evening, while Elias studied the disk, the holographic projection shimmered, revealing a faint pattern he had not noticed before. It was a sequence of symbols, almost like a code within the code. He traced each line carefully, recognizing a logic that seemed familiar, almost human. A spark of understanding flared. Humans, with their ability to recognize patterns and think creatively, had an advantage here. Aliens relied on brute calculation or memory, but humans could see connections others could not. Elias worked late into the night, deciphering the sequence. Slowly, a picture began to emerge, a network of coordinates leading to repositories hidden across the galaxy. Each repository contained knowledge, technology, and artifacts that had been preserved by the precursor civilization. These were not random points in space. They were carefully chosen, designed to protect the information from those who could misuse it. He realized that humans, for reasons unknown, had been connected to this network. The crest on the disk was a clue, a sign that someone long ago had intended for a human to rediscover these relics. The thought was both exhilarating and daunting. Humans had often been underestimated, but this discovery suggested that they might have played a role in shaping galactic history. As dawn approached, Elias leaned back and looked out at the stars. The vastness of space seemed less intimidating now. It was a puzzle, a challenge, and a story waiting to be told. Humans were young in the galaxy, yes, but they had qualities no other species could match: creativity, adaptability, and an unyielding curiosity. These traits had brought him to this moment, allowing him to see what others could not. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult. Alien factions would watch him, some with friendly curiosity, others with more dangerous intent. But he also knew that humans had always faced challenges and overcome them with ingenuity and perseverance. The discovery of the crest was not an accident, it was a beginning. Elias carefully packed his data pad, taking the scans with him. The day's work was done, but the journey had only just begun. Somewhere in the galaxy, the other relics waited, hidden in systems untouched for millennia. Humans would have to travel far, think deeply, and act wisely to uncover them. And when they did, the galaxy would see that humanity was more than a minor species. They were thinkers, explorers, and perhaps even guardians of ancient knowledge. The stars outside the station gleamed like scattered jewels, silent witnesses to the unfolding story. Elias took a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and resolve. The crest had been recognized, the path was clear, and humans were ready to step into a story that was far larger than themselves. The galaxy would soon discover that humans were clever, persistent, and never to be underestimated. And so, with the first threads of understanding woven into his mind, Elias Harper began the next phase of his journey. The relics would guide him, the patterns would reveal themselves, and the galaxy would start to recognize humanity's place, not as observers, but as participants in a legacy that stretched across the stars. Elias Harper felt a strange mix of excitement and caution as he prepared for his next step. The discovery of the crest and the hidden network of relics had changed everything. Humans were no longer observers in the galaxy. They were potential participants in a story far larger than anyone had imagined. He had maps, symbols, and clues pointing to distant star systems where the precursor civilization had left repositories of knowledge. But getting there would not be simple. He stepped onto a small scout vessel, sleek and designed for exploration rather than battle. Its cockpit lights glowed softly as he activated the engines, feeling the familiar hum beneath him. Elisara Station receded behind him, a glittering jewel against the endless black of space. As he navigated toward the first coordinates revealed by the disk, Elias reviewed his scans. Each repository was hidden in remote systems, often in hazardous regions, asteroid fields, binary star systems, or planets with violent magnetic storms. The precursor civilization had designed them to be difficult to reach for anyone unworthy of the knowledge. The journey was long, and Elias had plenty of time to think. Humans had always excelled at solving problems creatively. Other species often relied on strength, technology, or memory, but humans had imagination. They could see patterns, connect distant ideas, and improvise when the unexpected happened. Elias knew that this ability would be his greatest asset. Halfway to the first system, a subtle alarm blinked on his console. He paused, scanning the sensors. A small patrol ship had detected his scout, moving quickly through the void toward him. Elias' heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from awareness. Alien factions were monitoring the relics, and they had noticed him. They likely believed that a human had no right to this knowledge. He activated the ship's stealth systems, slipping into the shadow of a nearby asteroid. The patrol ship passed without detecting him, and Elias allowed himself a small smile. Humans had always survived by adapting quickly and thinking differently. No other species would have imagined hiding in the blind spot of an asteroid's orbit. The encounter reinforced what he already suspected. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and that underestimation would give him an advantage. Arriving at the first coordinates, Elias found a small planet, barren and rocky, with jagged cliffs and deep chasms. The atmosphere was thin but breathable for short periods. He landed carefully near a massive cliff face, where scans indicated the presence of an underground structure. The relics had pointed him here, and now he had to rely on intellect rather than force to uncover their secrets. The entrance was hidden beneath a natural rock formation, disguised to appear as part of the cliff. Elias studied the carvings etched into the stone, geometric patterns that repeated in complex sequences. His fingers traced the shapes, feeling the subtle grooves worn smooth by time. He recognized a logic in the design, a puzzle that had been meant to test the observer's mind. Hours passed as Elias worked. He manipulated the symbols, rotated them in sequences, and tested patterns. His human intuition guided him where computation alone might fail. Slowly, the entrance responded, panels sliding open to reveal a narrow corridor descending into darkness. Elias' pulse quickened. The first repository of the precursor civilization awaited, and he had proven worthy of entry. Inside, the air was cool and still. Ancient lights flickered on automatically as he stepped forward, illuminating walls covered in inscriptions. Holographic projectors activated, casting symbols and maps into the air. Elias examined each carefully, noting the connections to the relics on Elisara Station. This place was more than a storage site. It was a library, a treasury of knowledge, and a testament to the intelligence of those who had come before. As he explored, Elias noticed a faint glow from a pedestal at the center of the chamber. On it rested a crystalline device, intricately carved and pulsing with light. The patterns matched those on the disk he had scanned back on the station. He reached out, letting his fingers hover over the surface. A sudden surge of energy ran through him, not dangerous but electrifying, as if the device recognized him. The holographic symbols shifted, forming a message in multiple languages. Elias decoded it carefully, realizing it was a guide, a set of instructions left by the precursor civilization. They had anticipated that some species might come seeking knowledge, but only those capable of ingenuity, patience, and insight could understand the instructions fully. Humans, it seemed, were indeed capable of thinking in ways the other species could not. But Elias was not alone. Sensors in the repository indicated movement outside. Alien scouts had arrived, their ships orbiting the planet trying to block access. They had realized that a human had reached a critical location and were preparing to intervene. Elias knew confrontation was inevitable, yet he also understood that direct combat would not help him. His advantage lay in intellect, creativity, and his ability to adapt to any situation. He activated the repository's mechanisms, following the instructions from the holographic message. Doors shifted, pathways opened, and hidden compartments revealed further artifacts. Elias moved quickly, yet carefully, ensuring he understood each step. The aliens outside could not see the subtle sequences he performed, the careful manipulations that bypassed traps designed to prevent brute force intrusion. Hours turned into the night cycle of the planet, yet Elias did not stop. Finally, he reached a chamber filled with data crystals, star maps, and devices of alien origin. He realized the true significance of the repository. It was not just knowledge, it was power. Tools, histories, and coordinates were all preserved here, and any species that could claim them would gain tremendous influence across the galaxy. Elias carefully examined the crystals. Some contained star charts of systems uncharted by current civilizations. Others held records of technologies that had been lost to time, energy sources, propulsion systems, and communication devices that could revolutionize travel. The implications were staggering. Humanity, for the first time, had direct access to knowledge that no other species had fully understood. Yet the aliens outside were growing restless. Their ships maneuvered into closer orbits, sending signals Elias could detect through his instruments. They believed they could pressure him, force him to leave, or seize the repository once he emerged. But Elias was ready. He activated the repository's defense systems, not as weapons but as distractions. Holographic illusions, energy fields, and automated doors that created labyrinthine corridors. Each obstacle required careful thought, not brute strength, giving him time to extract the data he needed. The aliens attempted to board, but the repository's design was too clever. Every entry point led to puzzles, barriers, and pathways that required understanding rather than force. Elias navigated them with the skill of a human mind trained to think creatively under pressure. The aliens, unfamiliar with this style of problem-solving, found themselves trapped in loops, unable to advance. With the immediate threat contained, Elias focused on the data. He copied star charts, scanned devices, and documented inscriptions. His mind raced, connecting patterns, forming hypotheses, and predicting the next step in the network of repositories. Each discovery reinforced a profound realization. Humans had a talent for seeing connections where others saw only isolated pieces. This was the strength that had allowed him to reach the repository first and would allow humanity to claim its place in galactic history. As the alien forces outside began to retreat, frustrated by their inability to navigate the repository, Elias paused to reflect. He was no longer just a human exploring ancient relics. He was a pioneer, proving that his species could operate on a level that many had deemed impossible. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but humans had survived countless challenges on Earth through ingenuity, perseverance, and adaptability. Now, the galaxy itself would witness these traits in action. He carefully packed the most important data and secured the repository's defenses to prevent unauthorized access. As he prepared to leave, he activated a holographic record left by the precursor civilization, a message addressed to any intelligent species that reached this point. It spoke of guardianship, responsibility, and wisdom. The message emphasized that knowledge was a test, not a prize, and that only those capable of ethical judgment and creative thought could harness it safely. Elias felt the weight of the responsibility. Humans were young, but they were proving capable. The return journey to the scout vessel was tense. Sensors indicated the alien patrols had adjusted their positions, still watching, still assessing. Elias maneuvered carefully, using the asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies to avoid detection. Every move relied on his ingenuity rather than firepower, a reminder that human survival often depended on brains more than brawn. As he finally launched into open space, the scout vessel gliding smoothly toward the next coordinates, Elias allowed himself a small smile. The first repository had been explored, the data secured, and the human advantage had been proven. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. More repositories awaited, each likely guarded by even greater challenges. Alien factions would continue to monitor, doubt, and perhaps even attempt to block progress. But humans had shown they could adapt, innovate, and overcome obstacles with intelligence and creativity. Looking out at the stars stretching endlessly before him, Elias felt a surge of hope and determination. The relics were more than ancient artifacts. They were a map to understanding, a bridge between humanity and the galaxy's forgotten past. And humans, underestimated and dismissed for so long, were beginning to prove that they could navigate the complexities of the cosmos as no one had expected. The scout vessel surged forward, carrying Elias toward the next repository. Each light year, each maneuver, each decoded symbol was another step in humanity's awakening in the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, civilizations old and new would soon learn that humans were clever, persistent, and never to be underestimated. Elias adjusted the navigation console, charting a course for the next destination. He felt the hum of the engines beneath him and the quiet anticipation of discovery ahead. The first major challenge had been overcome, but the journey was far from over. Humanity's story in the galaxy was just beginning, and he, Elias Harper, would be at the forefront, showing that the human mind, curious, creative, and relentless, was a force even the oldest civilizations could not ignore. The stars outside the scout vessel stretched endlessly, cold and distant, yet alive with possibility. Elias Harper's mind was sharp, alert, and racing with calculations. The first repository had been explored, the data secured, and humanity's capability proven. Yet a sense of unease settled over him. Alien factions were growing restless, and he knew that the moment they realized how humans were using the relics, they would respond aggressively. His journey had begun as exploration. Now it had become a test of survival and wit. The next coordinates led to a system cloaked in an asteroid belt so dense that even small ships risked damage. Elias navigated carefully, weaving between jagged rocks while monitoring the sensors. Every movement required patience and precision. A single miscalculation could leave him stranded or worse, exposed to alien forces. His hands moved with practiced skill, adjusting the thrusters in subtle increments, anticipating the gravitational pull of larger asteroids. The stars beyond seemed indifferent to his struggle, yet the quiet shimmer of distant planets reminded him that discovery awaited. When he finally reached the planet indicated by the second set of relic coordinates, he found a desolate world with jagged mountains and deep, shadowed valleys. The atmosphere was thin, harsh winds sweeping across the surface. Sensors indicated the presence of an underground complex, its entrance obscured by natural rock formations and layers of sediment. Elias knew that the precursor civilization had designed these repositories to be difficult to access, testing the intelligence and resourcefulness of anyone attempting entry. He approached carefully, studying the carvings etched into the cliff face. They were intricate, more complex than anything he had encountered in the first repository. Alien symbols intertwined with patterns resembling natural phenomena, star constellations, magnetic fields, and celestial alignments. Elias traced the designs with his fingers, feeling the subtle grooves, understanding the logic behind them. This repository would not yield its secrets easily. Hours passed as he worked to decipher the entry sequence. His human mind, trained to recognize patterns and solve puzzles, was the perfect tool. Other species might have brute strength, advanced computation, or telepathy, but humans could improvise, see hidden connections, and adapt on the fly. Elias manipulated symbols, rotated panels, and aligned shapes with precision. Slowly, the entrance responded, revealing a narrow passage descending into darkness. As he entered, the temperature dropped. The walls were lined with crystalline structures that pulsed faintly with energy. Holographic symbols flickered to life, projecting sequences into the air. Elias studied them carefully, realizing that the repository was designed to test both intellect and character. The sequences were complex, requiring insight, adaptability, and patience, qualities humans often excelled at in ways that other species did not. Suddenly, his sensors picked up movement outside the planet's orbit. Alien vessels had arrived in force, more numerous and aggressive than before. They were prepared to block access, perhaps to seize the repository or destroy it. Elias' pulse quickened, but his mind remained clear. Confrontation would not win this challenge, cleverness would. He activated the repository's internal mechanisms, using the holographic instructions to create barriers and misdirections. Doors shifted, hallways extended or collapsed, and energy fields created illusions. The aliens outside could not navigate the complex without understanding its logic. Despite the immediate danger, Elias focused on the artifacts. The repository contained vast stores of knowledge, devices that harnessed energy in ways current technology could not, star maps of unexplored systems, and archives of civilizations lost to time. Each discovery reinforced a growing realization. Humans were uniquely equipped to interpret these relics. Other species, though powerful or ancient, lacked the creativity and flexibility required to succeed. Elias felt a surge of pride. Humanity, underestimated for so long, was beginning to assert its presence in the galaxy through intelligence and perseverance. Hours passed as he carefully documented the contents of the repository. Sensors indicated that alien scouts were attempting to enter, their efforts growing increasingly desperate. Elias had anticipated this. The repository's defenses, activated with precise timing and sequences, created puzzles that required insight to solve. Any forceful attempt would fail. He watched the external scanners, observing the aliens becoming frustrated, their patterns erratic as they tried and failed to penetrate the complex. Finally, Elias reached the chamber at the heart of the repository. Here, the data crystals were more numerous, more sophisticated, and more revealing than in the first repository. He realized that the precursor civilization had left not only knowledge, but also instructions on ethical usage. The data emphasized responsibility, caution, and understanding. Power alone was meaningless without wisdom, and only those capable of thoughtful application could benefit. Elias felt the weight of the responsibility. Humanity was young, yes, but capable of rising to this challenge. A sudden vibration ran through the chamber. Elias looked up to see that the aliens had found a way to force their way inside, exploiting a side entrance he had not noticed. They advanced with precision, confident in their superior numbers and technology. Elias knew that direct confrontation would be disastrous. Weapons would not solve this puzzle. Instead, he relied on human ingenuity. He manipulated panels to create a maze of shifting corridors, activated energy fields to confuse sensors, and projected holographic illusions to mislead intruders. Every action was calculated, exploiting weaknesses in the aliens' approach and demonstrating the adaptive thinking humans excelled at. The aliens hesitated, caught in a web of logic and deception they did not understand. Elias moved quickly, securing the most important data crystals and preparing for evacuation. He realized that the repository was not merely a collection of artifacts. It was a living puzzle, one designed to challenge the mind, not the muscles. His success was proof that humans, through creativity and insight, could navigate challenges that others could not. As he activated the escape sequence, the repository's walls shifted, sealing paths behind him and creating a clear route to the exit. He ran, scanning constantly for threats, and finally emerged into the harsh light of the planet's surface. The alien forces, frustrated and unable to follow the repository's logic, began to retreat. Elias allowed himself a moment of relief but did not linger. Time was precious, and more challenges awaited in other repositories. Back in his scout vessel, Elias reviewed the collected data. The repository had yielded more than knowledge, it had provided confirmation. Humans were capable of solving problems, adapting to unexpected situations, and understanding complex systems in ways no other species could. The galaxy had long underestimated humanity, but now the proof was undeniable. His pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the thrill of discovery. The journey to the next set of coordinates would be even more challenging. Alien factions were aware of his activities and would not remain passive. They might attempt to intercept, deceive, or sabotage him, yet Elias felt a profound confidence. Humans had survived and thrived through ingenuity, curiosity, and persistence. These traits, often dismissed by older species, would guide him through the trials ahead. As the scout vessel accelerated toward the next destination, Elias allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The repository had not only tested his intellect, but also reinforced a truth about humanity. Adaptability, creativity, and resilience were as powerful as technology or brute force. The alien factions outside the planet might see numbers and firepower as strength, but humans had something different, something they had long underestimated: the ability to think beyond limits, to solve problems creatively, and to endure. Elias activated a holographic projection of the map linking the discovered repositories. The path ahead was treacherous, spanning systems with extreme environments, hidden dangers, and more puzzles designed to challenge any intelligent species. Yet he felt ready. Each challenge, each obstacle was an opportunity to prove humanity's value, not just in survival, but in understanding and shaping the galaxy. The stars outside glimmered with silent judgment, yet also with promise. The next repository awaited, and with it, the chance to uncover further secrets of the precursor civilization. Alien factions would continue to observe, doubt, and perhaps interfere, but humans had already demonstrated an unexpected advantage. Insight, creativity, and determination were human strengths, and Elias was determined to use them fully. The scout vessel surged forward, slicing through the void with quiet precision. Elias adjusted the controls, monitoring energy levels, navigation systems, and sensors. Every decision required focus, every maneuver demanded thought, yet he welcomed the challenge. The darkness of space was not empty. It was a puzzle waiting to be solved by minds capable of seeing connections others missed. Humanity, underestimated and dismissed, was now part of that story. As he approached the coordinates of the next repository, Elias allowed himself a small smile. The first two had tested his skill, intellect, and resourcefulness. The next would demand even more. The alien factions outside were aware, watching, calculating, and perhaps underestimating him. That underestimation was a gift. Humans thrived when others failed to predict their ingenuity. Elias checked the last systems one final time. The repository ahead would challenge him physically, mentally, and strategically. He knew that the moment he stepped onto its surface, the stakes would rise, yet he was ready. Humans had survived impossible odds on Earth, adapted to challenges, and now were proving themselves capable on a galactic scale. The stars outside the cockpit shimmered like a promise, guiding him toward the unknown. Elias Harper's journey was far from over, but with each discovery, each puzzle solved, and each challenge overcome, humanity's place in the galaxy became more certain. Creativity, adaptability, and intelligence were strengths no species could ignore. And somewhere in the vast darkness, the galaxy was beginning to see that humans were not just survivors. They were pioneers, thinkers, and forces to be reckoned with. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of adventure. The next repository awaited. The challenges would grow, the dangers would intensify, but humans had already shown what they were capable of. And as the scout vessel glided forward, the first light of realization began to spread across the galaxy. Humans were clever, persistent, and impossible to underestimate. Elias Harper's scout vessel cut through the darkness of space with quiet determination. The coordinates before him pointed to the final repository, the place that the ancient civilization had left as the ultimate test. He had already explored 2 repositories, each revealing more of the galaxy's hidden past and humanity's unexpected connection to it. Yet he knew this last one would be different. This was not simply a storage of knowledge. It was a place of revelation, designed to test the mind, heart, and spirit of any who sought its secrets. The star system he entered was unusual. Twin suns burned brightly in the sky, casting shifting shadows across jagged planets. Asteroids drifted lazily, yet with a subtle gravitational pull that made navigation treacherous. Elias adjusted the thrusters, relying on both his instruments and intuition. Years of studying patterns, symbols, and alien systems had taught him that success often came from thinking beyond logic alone. Humans had always survived by noticing what others overlooked, improvising where rigid methods failed. Now, that skill was essential. He landed on a barren planet whose surface was littered with crystalline formations. The ground shimmered faintly, reflecting the light of the twin suns. Elias' sensors indicated a large underground complex beneath the largest crystal formation, its entrance concealed by the natural geometry of the terrain. He approached carefully, scanning the patterns etched into the crystals. These designs were unlike anything he had seen before, fluid, almost alive, and clearly designed to interact with those who understood logic and intuition. Hours passed as Elias worked to unlock the entrance. He traced symbols, adjusted alignments, and followed sequences that only someone capable of connecting distant ideas could interpret. The precursors had created a puzzle that relied not on strength or force, but on ingenuity, adaptability, and insight, the very traits humans excelled at. Finally, the entrance shifted, sliding open to reveal a descending tunnel illuminated by soft, pulsing light. Inside, the air was cool and still. Holographic symbols floated in the air, displaying complex sequences of information in alien scripts, interwoven with star maps, mathematical formulas, and artistic renderings of celestial events. Elias' mind raced as he processed the patterns, noting correlations with the previous repositories. Each step revealed more of a greater network, a story of civilizations long vanished and the role humans were destined to play. At the center of the repository, a massive crystalline structure dominated the chamber. It pulsed with energy, resonating with a faint hum that seemed almost alive. Elias approached cautiously, feeling an almost magnetic pull toward it. Embedded in the crystal was a device, larger and more intricate than anything he had seen before. Symbols on its surface matched the family crest he had discovered months earlier at Elisara Station. His pulse quickened. This was the culmination of everything, an acknowledgement, a challenge, and perhaps even a message directed specifically at humanity. As he reached out to examine the device, a holographic projection activated, filling the chamber with light. A figure appeared, shimmering and translucent, representing the precursor civilization. It spoke in a language Elias did not understand at first, yet somehow he comprehended the meaning. The message was clear. Knowledge and power were tests, rewards for those who could think beyond themselves and demonstrate ingenuity, patience, and ethical judgment. The projection shifted, showing humans in distant corners of the galaxy, small and overlooked, yet capable of creativity and persistence. The precursors had recognized a potential in humanity long before humans had explored the stars themselves. The crest on the relics was not just a symbol, it was a signature, a connection between human lineage and the galaxy's ancient history. Elias felt a mix of awe and responsibility. Humans were being called to rise, to prove that their ingenuity, curiosity, and adaptability could shape the galaxy's future. Suddenly, the repository's sensors detected alien vessels approaching in force. They had followed him from the previous system, intent on seizing or destroying the repository. Elias' heart raced, but his mind remained focused. Direct confrontation was impossible. He had no chance against multiple advanced ships, but the precursors had anticipated this. The repository's defenses were designed to reward creativity. He activated the mechanisms not as weapons, but as intricate puzzles and illusions. Holographic mazes appeared, energy fields shifted, and the corridors reconfigured themselves. Alien intruders, relying on computation and force, were trapped, unable to navigate the complex without insight and ingenuity. Elias moved swiftly, copying the most critical data crystals, scanning devices, and holographic messages. Each contained not only technology and star charts, but instructions for understanding the galaxy's deep past. He realized that humans had been placed at the crossroads of history, given the opportunity to connect the dots that other species could not. Creativity, adaptability, and observation had always been undervalued by older civilizations, yet here they were decisive. The alien forces outside grew increasingly frustrated. Some attempted to force entry, but every path led to dead ends or illusions. Others tried to hack the systems, but the repository's design required lateral thinking, pattern recognition, and ethical judgment. Humans, Elias realized, had advantages that even the galaxy's most advanced species lacked. Each challenge he overcame was proof that humanity's underestimated qualities, imagination, persistence, and insight, were exactly what the galaxy needed. As the alien forces retreated, defeated by the very design of the repository, Elias paused to absorb the enormity of the moment. He had not won through violence or numbers. He had succeeded because he thought, adapted, and understood. Humanity's strength lay not in size or technology alone, but in the mind, the ability to see connections, improvise, and persevere. The realization filled him with pride. Humans, long considered insignificant by older civilizations, were proving themselves essential in ways that could not be ignored. Elias activated the final sequence of the repository. The crystalline device pulsed, projecting a vast star map of the galaxy. Paths connecting hidden repositories, ancient colonies, and forgotten civilizations glowed faintly. At the center was a symbol, his family crest. The precursors had designed this moment to acknowledge humanity's arrival, to show that humans were not merely participants but potential guardians of knowledge. Elias' eyes widened. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. Now, humanity's role was clear. He took the data crystals, carefully documenting everything. The repositories contained knowledge that could accelerate human understanding of energy, space travel, and diplomacy. But more importantly, they contained proof. Humans were capable, creative, and adaptable in ways that even the most advanced species could not fully comprehend. Elias understood the responsibility. Knowledge without wisdom could be dangerous. Humans would need to use it carefully, ethically, and with insight. With the alien forces still retreating, Elias prepared to leave. The final repository had revealed the ultimate truth. Humans were part of the galaxy's deep history, linked to civilizations that had long been forgotten. They had always possessed the qualities needed to navigate complexity, overcome challenges, and solve problems where others failed. Elias felt a surge of determination. Humanity's moment had come. The journey back to Elisara Station was quiet, but the weight of discovery pressed upon him. He reviewed the star maps, data crystals, and holographic messages. Each detail told a story of human potential, ingenuity, and connection. The galaxy, long indifferent or dismissive of humanity, would soon see a species capable of remarkable insight, persistence, and creativity. The seeds of recognition had been planted. Upon returning to the station, Elias shared his findings cautiously with archivist Norix. The alien scholar examined the data, his eyes widening with astonishment. "Humans, you have proven yourself," Norix said quietly. Not by force, not by numbers, but by mind. The galaxy underestimated your kind, and yet you have succeeded where others would have failed. The galaxy had long assumed that humans were young, fragile, and insignificant. Now, with the data and the connections revealed, humans could no longer be ignored. Intelligence, creativity, and persistence were powerful tools, and humans had demonstrated them fully. Word of Elias' discoveries spread slowly, carefully, to avoid panic or misuse. Scholars, diplomats, and explorers from various species began to recognize that humans were not minor players. The family crest on the relics became a symbol of humanity's ingenuity and hidden legacy. Aliens who had doubted humans now approached with respect, curiosity, and caution. The underestimation of humanity had been overturned, replaced with recognition of a species capable of shaping history. Elias looked out from the observation deck, watching ships move through the stars. Humans, small and underestimated, had claimed a place in the galaxy's deep history. They had shown that intelligence, creativity, and adaptability were as decisive as age, size, or technology. The repositories were more than collections of relics. They were a testament to the potential of those who could think beyond limitations. Humanity had risen to that challenge. As he reviewed the data one final time, Elias felt a profound sense of accomplishment and purpose. The journey had been perilous, the challenges immense, yet humans had succeeded. The galaxy now recognized that humans were clever, persistent, and capable of remarkable insight. The family crest, once a small symbol on a relic, now represented a species that could navigate the most complex puzzles, survive the greatest challenges, and leave a lasting mark on history. The twin suns of distant systems shone brightly outside the station, and Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had proven themselves, yet there were more mysteries, more repositories, and more opportunities across the galaxy. The future was vast, and humanity was ready. Insight, creativity, and perseverance would guide them. The galaxy would soon learn that humans were not merely survivors. They were pioneers, explorers, and thinkers capable of shaping the destiny of civilizations. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the thrill of discovery and the weight of responsibility. The stars stretched endlessly before him, a canvas for humanity's ingenuity. The relics had revealed their secrets, and humans had risen to the challenge. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, but now humanity's place was undeniable. Intelligence, creativity, and adaptability had proven decisive. The legacy of the precursors, the family crest, and the hidden repositories had all converged to show one truth: humans were clever, persistent, and impossible to overlook. As Elias looked out at the stars, he felt a quiet pride. The journey had been dangerous and difficult, but it had revealed the extraordinary potential of humanity. They had faced challenges that other species could not solve, overcome obstacles designed to defeat the unprepared, and emerged victorious through ingenuity alone. The galaxy had begun to see what humans had always known. They were capable of far more than anyone had imagined. And somewhere among the scattered stars and ancient relics, the legacy of humanity stretched forward, ready to shape the galaxy in ways long forgotten but now rediscovered. Elias Harper smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning of a story that would continue across the stars, driven by curiosity, intelligence, and the unyielding spirit of humanity.